called Overcoming Isms Together. These are battles we've been fighting for years and years and years in various venues and twists and turns, and unfortunately we still have to fight them today. But I want to read to you, and those of you who were here last night heard this. This is from the very first convention of the Gray Panthers in 1975. We advocate a radical approach to social change by attacking those forces that corrupt our institutions, attitudes, and values, such as materialism, racism, sexism, paternalism, militarism, and extreme nationalism. We still hold to this 40 years later, and this session is really going to let these people speak to some of those corrupt forces that continue to exist in our culture. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You each get a chance to speak, and then we'll have a little discussion and dialogue about how to do this together.
It's an honor to be here. I'm Lennox Abrigo. I pastor a church, Christian congregation in Hyattsville, Maryland, and I'm also president for National Action Network, DC chapter, that's Reverend Sharpton's group, and his organization. Yes. As you know, Reverend Sharpton sends his greetings to you. This meeting is in his heart, and he understands what you're doing and appreciates it. You guys take a large piece of the load off of us because you do so much that we don't have the time to do but wish we could do. And I guess it ought to be that way because we ought to share our responsibilities in these, on these civil rights issues. Gray Panthers have done an outstanding job. That goes without question. And we have been following your story and your accomplishments and wish that we can have more events together. In other words, we can merge our events and probably share various stages and platforms. I have been assigned with these other distinguished guests to talk about racism. And usually when a black person is on the platform talking about racism, the underlying assumption from the audience is that he's angry and is just going to spew venom on white people because he sees them as his oppressors.
We know better.
Good. So today I do not want to give the impression that I believe that America is a racist country. Neither do I want to give the impression, or nor do I believe that all white people are racist. My task here today is more academic. I want to give somewhat of a perspective of racism, not an absolute opinion, since I still consider myself mortal and finite, and my opinions are all tentative. There's an interesting verse in the Bible, 1 Corinthians 13:9. It says we know in part and we prophesy in part. That philosophical statement is expounded upon by Karl Popper, one of my idols and mentors. Popper says that all human knowledge is tentative and fractional. So I have bought into that both from scripture and from the classroom. I believe that whatever I know is tentative and temporary. That does not mean that they're not absolutes. It's just that I don't have the capacity to have absolute knowledge on anything. So there may be absolutes, and I'm sure there are, but all of my knowledge is temporary and fractional. I'm learning and growing every day. So I'm sharing a perspective from my work and study that may inform you, or you can discard it. If you discard it, I'll feel hurt. If you take some of it, I'll feel honored. But it will change as I grow older. and as I meet new people and engage in new things. I've chosen to talk about the progression of racism in America, the progression of American racism. And by way of definition, racism is a suffocating four-layered cloud. Wherever racism exists, it stultifies and causes whatever is under its shadow to atrophize. So racism is a suffocating four-layered cloud. The first layer is the majority race or nationality. Second is the minority race or nationality. Third is destruction. And fourth is the use of government institutions to destroy the minority. So let me say that slowly so you can get it. For racism to exist, there must be a majority race or nationality. Second, there must be a minority race or nationality. Third, there must be the desire to destroy the minority. And fourth is the use of government institutions to accomplish that task of destruction. When people fight as individuals, we don't consider that racism. That might be prejudice or dislike or anger. But when the institutions of government are used by one race, the majority race or the powerful race, to minimize or destroy the minority race, only when those institutions of government come into play to accomplish this objective of destruction does racism exist according to my theory. So in the Trayvon Martin case, when George Zimmerman saw Trayvon Martin, and he disliked him, or he profiled him, or he thought he was going to steal, or that he was one who had stolen, and he wanted to punish him, that's just two human beings interacting. However, when he got into the fight and Trayvon Martin died, and the cops came, and even before the cops came, he called and gave the cops information. Then you're beginning to see the situation heading in the direction of racism, because you've got institutions of government now coming into play with these two individuals. Law enforcement is an institution of government. So law enforcement gets involved and never asks him, well, you're telling us this about this guy, how can you be sure? What is prompting these statements that you're making? But so they go along with him. So he belongs to the majority race, Trayvon Martin belongs to the minority race, and so government is getting involved. Then the cops come and they see the youngster dead, and they probably don't preserve the crime scene. I'm not saying they did this deliberately, these are the facts of the case. And then they take Zimmerman to the precinct, and he is released that night on the basis of a law. Well, the law, he was legally released. Stand your ground laws allow the perpetrator to claim self-defense, or that he felt threatened, and so he took action. But that law only existed because the legislature of that jurisdiction passed the law. So you have two branches of government now involved in this situation. So the judiciary, law enforcement, and then now the legislature. Then he goes to court and he's acquitted. So I am not saying who's right or wrong. I'm not passing a verdict on that case. I'm not a lawyer. I have an opinion, but it's just an opinion. It's just my feelings. But I'm saying that situation progressed from an encounter between two people, a negative or hostile encounter, to a racist situation, because the branches of government became involved to protect the majority race person in that situation. America has a tradition of racism. And again, I must reiterate that I am not arguing for proposition that America is a racist country or that white people are racist. I have, as my bio said, I've been married for 39 years. We have 5 grown children. We have 2 white daughters-in-law and many mixed grandchildren. So I'm just giving you a theoretical definition of racism from my perspective, and we can discuss it. And it is tentative, fractional, and temporary. The rhythm of this lecture is for the purpose of pathos, and whenever black people talk, we come from a tradition where you know, the call and response is a part of our communication. So I go to white churches and they sit for 2 hours and nobody says anything other than one who's speaking. And I've learned to appreciate that, because that's what people do, just not what I do. So I've added a component of pathos to my presentation that borrows and appeals to President Obama's mantra of "Yes, we can." So the theme and the throb of this discourse is, can we? And the answer is yes, we can. I want to give a word of acknowledgement to Melissa Harris Perry, who wrote an interesting article in The Nation on September 16, 2012, and I have relied somewhat on her article. In 1798, the US government passed 4 acts of Congress called the Alien and Sedition Acts. And they were targeted at French. It was an attempt to restrict French immigration and to proscribe against the proliferation of entry of French people. So here you have the legislature acting for the majority class against a nationality or race. And this came about because of fear, probably of the Enlightenment. You know, our country was founded by Puritans, those who wanted to set the Church of England straight, and so they probably were afraid of the Enlightenment thinking and of the spirit of the French Revolution. Fortunately, by 1802, that law was repealed by our then President Thomas Jefferson. In 1845, the Know Nothing movement formed the Native American Party to fight laws to restrict Irish immigrants from populating America all willy-nilly, as we would say in our family, with a fear of Catholicism. And we're revisiting President Kennedy's death again recently, and so probably this fear of Catholicism may have had something to do with his death. But that party was dissolved in 1860. And then in 1882, President Arthur's Chinese Exclusion Act sought to ban Chinese immigrants from this country. Thankfully, it was repealed in 1943. In the 1880s, when Reconstruction ended in the South, states of the former Confederacy instituted Jim Crow laws that denied blacks many things. I just want to list 4 in the interest of brevity: the right to vote, the right to hold public office, the right to public accommodations, and fair treatment on public transportation. Thank heavens, a Southerner, President Johnson, signed the Civil Rights Act in 1964 that opened the door for non-discrimination in public accommodations. In 1890, Wisconsin's Bennett Law and Illinois' Edward Law restricted the use of German in classrooms in those 2 states. So here again, the laws are being used to push back against a particular class, race, or nationality of people. Both laws were repealed in 1982. In 1892, sorry. In 1942, more than 100,000 Japanese nationals and citizens, these are American citizens, Japanese descent, were imprisoned. They were put into camps. And under a particular restriction that was called the War Relocation Camps. That was a legally organized camp in recriminations for Pearl Harbor. The camps were closed in 1945 and reparations were paid in 1948. The question that remains is, can we end white racism in America? My answer is, yes, we can. And if you're not too cold, you can say that with me. Yes, we can. There's a Chinatown empirical evidence of my hope. There's a Chinatown in many major American cities. So we asked the Chinese, can we?
Yes,
And their thunderous response is,
yes, we can.
there are numerous Japanese cars and auto manufacturing plants in America. You drive some of those cars. So ask the Japanese, can we?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can is an American doctrine, the sine qua non that defines the ethos and soul of a people. When asked if they could found and raise a nation independent of King George and the British Empire, our founding fathers cannoned.
Yes,
we can. Was Congress able to pass a federal law to end chattel slavery in America? President Lincoln's executive order said, yes, we can. And even though that was an executive order that was a part of the war's powers, then President Lincoln's act began a system which later produced a law that banned slavery in America completely and everywhere. So, can blacks sit at the front of public transportation, Rosa Parks said?
Yes, we can.
Can we all use public accommodations? The 1964 Civil Rights Act says.
Yes, we can.
Can we vote? President Johnson's Voting Rights Acts of 1965 says.
Yes, we can.
Can blacks hold the highest public office in the land? President Obama twice answers.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
We are all coming and we are all going. Bless us all, set us all free. We are all smiling and we